Hello, this is Pixie doing a video. Just playing around my position of my camera. It act as a distraction. I shouldn't really, just focus on the bloody road, that's what you do. Just having some thoughts really about avoiding becoming people talk about these terms and they're just things that are thrown around. Like incels and stuff like that. But I can see why, because basically the matrix of our emotional, where we function, is different for each gender. And maybe men just focus on survival, that's really what it is. But things that don't make sense seem to just like linger in their minds. And so we're not geared up. So this, I guess both genders are for survival. We focus on the environment, while it's more of an internal battle for women within the social dynamics. And as a result, there's certain traits that are built in biologically from both sides of the fence. You know, you just can't get away from them. And if you ignore them, they still exist. You're still going to be keeping your. I mean, for the female gender is a built-in to keep their options open, and also the recovery rate from relationships is faster. It's just because they're used to things like losing things they love, I guess, because really they're driven towards their children. So once the children are there, and that part of that cohesion of building a family. But nowadays, I guess the truth shows that it's really the man isn't that important as long as she has the resources to raise the children. She's basically got into that relationship because she wants to raise children, and then outside of that, she goes through a different phase where maybe she wants to get something for herself, and so she's focused on the man that maybe will help support her, drive her forward in building herself socially. So the social dynamics are very important. For a man, it's probably about power, and he's to attain that through his environment. The more control he has over his environment, the more power he has, and that extends over people. But people are not necessarily the primary focus, because if the man already has access to the resources, the people will fall in line anyway. You just basically, they get the ultimatum, well fine, you won't be included in the project or whatever, you know. It's kind of a bit more different, and it's probably more attractive because it may be an opposite way for a woman to deal with a situation, because sometimes the need not to offend, to burn the bridge, to break off that contact completely, you know, they basically keep some line of communication or peace between someone when they don't need to. Or they're just not basically filling in the blanks. They like the power of confusion it generates maybe in men's minds. So the incel thing is, if, for me, maybe there's certain, like with a lot of men, there's certain, what would come across as autistic components to the personality, in that we're driven towards goals, and we don't necessarily overanalyze emotions. They don't make so much sense, they just cause trauma. And also the deep brain programming with what a family is, what a relationship is, all these other things. Now, and also maybe other things that are myths, like you think when people get to a certain age, they're looking for certain types of relationships. But you might encounter people that they've followed their design, so they have a family, they've got a husband, but they want to play around a bit. They want to play with the fantasy of some other people's minds without you considering the impact of it. Because they think, oh, it's just fun, just having a bit of fun. You know, they're just basically living in the moment. So that's another thing, men's the vision, short-term focus, men with long-term goals, and that they're very constructed in the way they think, because that way they don't have to emotionally engage with ifs and whats and buts. They can pretty much roll with their plan and then focus on that, and it reduces the overall stress, because they're in working environments that cause stress. I mean, there's other thoughts I had where women want equal pay, but not necessarily the same level of labour. Which, is understandable. I mean, as a pragmatist, you want the same as other people so that you don't rely on them, but you will still follow through with things that are primal. Like, you still look for a guy who's got good access to resources for your benefit. If you're driven towards money, it depends what your driving force is. Some people live chaotically, and they live on benefits and other things. And to be honest, they don't have to. The guy doesn't have to earn lots of money. He just has to have traits that person finds attractive. Well, they're used to getting what they want, but they're not looking at the bigger picture. Is how long does this method of just take what you want attitude work? It basically will eventually be shut down. It's not sort of necessarily alpha traits in the same way. I mean, some people slow down. There we go. There's always something going on, and also the narrative of belief. People believe that it's like beta males and there's alphas, and I think there's just people that there's people that actually will want to blend in, and there's people that want to sort of cause an impact in their sort of behaviour. It's just different traits of operation, but they don't necessarily fall into sort of set categories of like, oh yeah, that's beta and that's not. But if women believe these traits and want men to be operating that certain way, they will start installing them in their children, and they start actually warping their perspective. I think there's actually a lot of harm happens in the parenting stage, because if there's things that unwanted traits, they tend to punish the child, and there's ones they like. So something. So they don't necessarily see acting out of his own impulses, being independent. If it seems to counteract what they want, they might find some sort of punishment in there. Kind of alienated, and I guess really that's also the strength to retain your character is important. And also embracing who you are, that's also important as well. Because we're all different, and we all have natural traits that we need to incorporate into our living, day-to-day living. So for me, I've got some ADHD traits in there, and I just be myself. And if people don't fully understand, that's fine. But then it emits a certain confidence in being comfortable with yourself, which might draw people in to be more interested in your character. But they don't fully understand, and maybe if they put you in a box, they lose interest if it's that kind of thinking. But just live for yourself, really. Self-love, live for yourself. So I'm trying to combat being like incel. I can understand that, I had an experience where somebody used me, and it's kind of compounded because it connects into work and stuff, and I can't walk away from it completely. So I need to manage the situation by acting differently, but that draws people in. So a kind of a level of silent quitting, in that I'm not putting myself out for the company, but I do put myself out for the client, because I don't need to punish them if I'm unhappy with certain things in place, and I don't want to be manipulated. So I put myself in a position where I feel more comfortable, and that distance and so on, that's something they have to be aware that was created. And I don't feel like falling into line or being manipulated and stuff, because that comes back to this belief system that maybe I'm a certain type of person, and therefore I would be glad to have somebody take advantage of me, want to flirt around. Now, there is certain aspects where you can be sort of cheeky and flirtatious and all sorts of things, but it's kind of knowing what's healthy as a boundary. And so there's certain rules that I might follow, or maybe should hold me back. But I don't think that. Well, I think it's reading the situation. That's probably the most important. And then also the environment. And if you meet in certain environments, like if you meet in a club or something, maybe somebody wants a relationship with somebody that's non-committal. So they're not going to look for certain types of people. They're going to want their benefits from them. Or maybe they want them to buy them a drink and whatever else. But they don't want a relationship with somebody they meet in that kind of environment. So they pick somebody that's going to be very temporary. And it's just a survival mechanism. Like you're with somebody who's got resources to make yourself feel better, to support your direction. Why with a guy, it might be a case of he needs to work on himself to acquire these things. So he needs to be independent. He needs to be functional. If he relies on other men, then he becomes a weaker person, maybe. But then also the need to maybe network with other men. It's such a mixed. You get so many mixed signals from society. So you just do the research, be yourself, love yourself, get on with life, maybe have a set plan, put that into action when you're at the right stage. This is for a guy. I mean, for women, who want to probably expand their horizons, they game up the system in that they look for better men and they look for a better position if they're looking for a relationship or whatever, because it might be a little bit of fancy women or something, I don't know, whatever they're into. But they try to get into the best position before they start losing their social status, because if they're selling their looks and they're running on their looks and appearance, they've got to adapt to meet the criteria. So if they're an older person, more mature person, sure, they can dress sexy and they can dress however they like. They can also use a certain amount of level of charm and other things. But the same tactics won't work exactly, because maybe there's expectation put on top of them. Maybe they got children. How do they manage that and other things? I mean, for a guy, he just has to knuckle down, pay for his kids to get out of wherever school, become adults, and still have a fund there set up when they come back to him asking for support. Or just gives them the right lessons in life, I guess, to move forward. So it's never straightforward. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go flying up ahead of you, because you don't know what's going on. Yeah, I mean, with things like types of males, you can use the body language. And so, maybe if you admire a certain person, that you would be more submissive towards them in certain ways. For a guy, I'm showing him sort of respect, but you've acknowledged them status. So it could be an older man, it could be anything really. And but if you're in a different situation, then you might put yourself in a position more of leadership, and that's really what comes down to it. Is can you take leadership roles, and if you're not able to do that, then that limits your ability to sort of carry forward. But then if you put yourself in a vulnerable positions, strong leadership, you might encounter challenges, and that might be from other males. And I guess maybe for women, they have certain behaviours and things. I mean, I don't overanalyze women's behaviour. They're just more detailed on certain areas of sort of social mechanics. And they might act out in certain behaviours, even if they've entered some form of commitment, because their nature is in how they feel and more driven towards the short-sighted focus of what they desire at the time or what they feel is right. But the long term is, if it's a threat towards their kids or family, then they might go back on whatever they've done. So, I mean, just for experience, I mean, I find that some women are flirtatious because their partners are not around. But if they were around, they wouldn't do that because they wouldn't want to put the risk of damaging the relationship. No, for sure, there's other men that have played some weird games. Just that I'm not in that mindset, so I can't really comment on that. So yeah, I think also I was thinking about is that just to sort of treat women as you would treat a bloke to a point, but you might be obviously tailor the humour might be different and so on. But that might be a better. I wouldn't look for friendship because there's always this thing. It's really what you can bring to them. You know, just to kind of like you're a bloke, aren't you? That kind of. Or you might be substituted for a guy in some way, some sort of companion or something beyond what you're looking for. Because it drains energy. Men have got limited amount of emotional support, and also when things like hitting the wall, because certain groups of men are more driven towards having children, and the relationship has a function. They don't just want to date. So a lot of guys that have dated were just sort of like enjoying the experience. They didn't want to settle down at that point. But when they do want to settle down, then they've already made their choices, and then women just thinking, oh, they can just settle down. They realise them type of men are not available because the men they're chasing are at a stage where they're just kind of they're not ready to settle down, just experiencing it. If that's what they're looking for, well, most average men they want to settle down because that's how they are, and then women are quite confused because these aren't the men that they're looking for. And then they might settle with people and stuff. And also these like Disney thinking doesn't help. So getting beyond all that. I mean, for me, it doesn't really matter. So like I say, you just want to have a healthy dynamic. You don't want to be looking at the opposite sex as something you should be afraid of, or you should allow your emotions to cloud how you respond. You just got to set what you consider healthy boundaries. And if you don't like it, it's like, oh, I'm busy, or I mean, I had it the other day with this. A married woman wrote to me out of the blue asking me about advice around cars. And I'm thinking, well, there's a hidden agenda in your behaviour. And I didn't really understand. It probably wanted me to help finance a bloody car. She's over in the UK. But because she's got a husband and a child, I thought it was inappropriate. Now, I didn't say that, but I nearly said, I think as a married woman, I think it's inappropriate to contact a man you don't know very well. Or even the fact that if I'm not married, or any bloke really, without the consent of your husband or something, I don't know. But anyways, peace on. Have a great one. Speak soon.